Look at verse 19. This, by the way, is one of the, for me, one of the most amazing little, often overlooked aspects of the entire Book of Mormon, and it happens quite a few times. Look at verse 19. Thus we see that when these Lamanites were brought to believe and to know the truth, they were firm and would suffer even unto death rather than commit sin. And thus we see that they buried their weapons of peace, or they buried their weapons of war for peace. Did you notice what just happened? I don't want to make too big of a deal of this, but it needs to at least be addressed. Thus we see that they did bury their weapons of peace makes no sense. That's a mess up. Somebody made a mistake. Is it Mormons scratching characters into a metal plate? Have you ever done this, where your brain is thinking through something as you write it out by hand, or even type it, and somehow your brain gets ahead of your hand and you write something or type something a little bit out of order and you look at it, whoa, that was wrong, and you quickly fix it? I love the fact that we have things like this in the Book of Mormon. If Joseph Smith is making up the book and he's dictating it to a scribe, and if he messes up and says, thus we see that they did bury their weapons of peace, he would say, oh, wait, that makes no, sorry, scratch that. Write it this way. Thus we see that they did bury their weapons of war for peace. Got that, Oliver? Yes, okay, let's move on. That's how you would do it if you're making this thing up. But if you're translating an ancient record that is written on metal plates, then you're probably going to translate however that's working in that process according to what was written. Can you picture Mormon writing along saying, thus we see that they did bury their weapons of peace, and then him pausing going, oh no, I did it again? Because there are multiple times previous to this where similar things have happened. This just happens to be the really obvious one. Notice that he then doesn't scratch it out or doesn't start over and rewrite the entire plate. He says, oh, actually what I really meant to say there was, or buried the weapons of war for peace. And then he moves on. Brothers and sisters, even when the Book of Mormon has a mistake, so to speak, even when it looks like it's wrong, it turns out to be right. Because what Mormon is showing us here, what the Lord is allowing to come through the record to us today, is the fact that Mormon would have never woken up and said, I want to mess up in my writing today. I want to make some mistakes. Nobody does that. He wanted to be perfect. He's doing the very best he can, and he is amazing, reading volumes of Nephite history and making very few errors in comparison to the volume of writing that he's giving us. But even when it's wrong, turns out the Book of Mormon's right, because here it shows us a beautiful pattern. And the pattern, the unwritten message for me is, Tyler, when you mess up, then recognize that you messed up, fix it, and then move on. And that's exactly what Mormon does over and over and over again. Whenever there's a struggle with the writing, he just recognizes it, fixes it, and moves on. He doesn't wallow in the mire of his mistake. And I love that for us today in the 21st century. When we're struggling to be as good as we can, we're going to occasionally mess up. We're going to say things wrong. We're going to do things wrong. Recognize it. Do the best you can to make it right and move on. It's a beautiful pattern. And there are a lot of these throughout the Book of Mormon, and you can start finding them. Let me show you just one more. Now, there are dozens of these. Simple ones like Ammon saying, I will show forth my power unto these my fellow servants, back in Alma 17. And then he says, or the power which is in me. So there are little corrections that it's not like a mistake, but it's just I don't like the way that came out, so I'm going to fix it so that it's more accurate to what happened. One of the more amazing ones that he corrected is found in Alma 43, verse 38. In this verse, listen to this. We're talking about the battle between Captain Moroni and Zarahemnah. It says, "While on the other hand, there was now and then a man fell among the Nephites by their swords and the loss of blood. They, the Nephites, being shielded from the more vital parts of the body." Did you catch that? There aren't very many Nephites dying in this battle because they're shielded from the more vital parts of the body. If you read it literally, that means the Lamanites are throwing vital body parts around the battlefield. And notice Mormon recognizes it again, and he says, or the more vital parts of the body being shielded from the strokes of the Lamanites. The Lord could have made it so that the wording was perfect, that we see no human frailty coming through, no mistakes of any kind. I love the Prophet Mormon. He's one of my heroes. And I am so grateful that the Lord allows these things to come through, because it teaches me, it gives me hope that when I'm trying my hardest to do my best and I still mess up, I too can recognize it, repair it, and move on and not have it define me. I love that shows up throughout the Book of Mormon without drawing attention to it.